light things on fire, they make things messy, they're a horrible giant mess. So everybody who had anything to do commerce-wise used horse wagons. During the gold rush, when Halliday was here with his father, he became a miner. He helped to work on mines, and he used his wire rope to move ore from the bottom of riverbeds and such up into the mining mills. And that was a cable wire that was always moving and would have connectors that had boxes that would carry up the ore, dump them off. Halliday's father eventually moved out of California back to London, but Halliday stayed. Halliday moved into San Francisco and was an entrepreneur in San Francisco, and he started selling more and more of his wire machinery for mining, but he also had his machinery would make storefronts and signs and stuff like that. So he was doing a lot of business with his wire rope. He was also a huge animal lover. And all the horse cars in San Francisco, as you know, has massive hills, would have about a 3-year lifespan to carry carts up the hills by horse. And one day, Halliday, on a regular basis, you would see this happen, but he witnessed a horse being pulled down the hill and they had to put the horse to death. So at that moment, he started putting more focus on actually putting cables in the ground to move the vehicles up these steep hills, because the horses obviously were dying from doing that. So he eventually got backers to help him pay for the first cable car line, which was built on Clay Street in San Francisco in 1873. And this is the very first time in history that a vehicle could go down a city street without a horse in front of it. So you could carry people around a town without having the expense of thousands of horses, having horses, carriers, keepers, food, all that. So it's the first time you're having a vehicle that can travel up and down a city street without a horse in front of it. It actually started what we consider the commute today. What we have to do now as a commute. The very first time it ever happened was the cable car. The western addition of San Francisco was added on to accommodate the cable cars that could go that far. Before this, the city size was about walking distance, even in Europe, unless it was a steam train, which wouldn't go down the streets. It would take you from city to city, but it was about walking distance. So this is the very first time in the world that we're having an expansion. This is after the Civil War. We're having an expansion of cities by the cable car. That happened for about 10 years. The worldwide form of transportation was cable car. So if you had a major city, you had a cable car running in that city to transport people. About 10 years into that, the electric trolley caught up to the cable car. So then the electric trolley is far less expensive to move people around. Cable cars, if you've ever ridden them in San Francisco, you'll know it's a big, giant, 17,000-pound car being carried by a thin little rope underneath the ground. They break down all the time. They have constant maintenance. The brakes have to be changed about every 3 days. They're wood brakes, even today. Those things are stopped by 4 wood brakes. So those have to be replaced every 3 days. Lots of maintenance, really expensive. So everywhere else in the country, they were just getting rid of the cable cars because it was a lot cheaper to have an electric vehicle move, because it was easier to stop, easier to get moving, and it's just a simpler and cheaper form of transportation. In San Francisco, they were trying to replace all of the cable cars with the electrics, but fortunately we have these giant hills. And these giant hills, the only thing that can make them are the cable cars, because the electric car just cannot get the energy to pull it up. The cable cars were independently owned. Transport systems early on in the history of the world and the United States were all individually owned companies that would have these different transportation systems. And there was a city charter that said it was a nickel to travel on any transport. So what started happening is companies started buying up all the different forms of transportation to make one group of owners that own most of the transportation systems. And that was what was happening in San Francisco when they're trying to get rid of the cable cars and put them in with electric, and it was far cheaper to have electrics. So the people who were doing that at the time bribed the city to get rid of the rest of the cable cars. And that was going along just fine. They spent about, in today's money, about $1 million in bribes, and the city was going to get rid of the cable cars, but the 1906 earthquake hits. So in the 1906 earthquake, it got rid of all the cable cars anyways, except for a few. Within months, those few car lines were running again. And those car lines really did help rebuild the city, because the electric, they couldn't put the electric up. But these cars, the lines were running, a couple of power plants were still there. At the time, all the power plants for the cable cars were run by coal. So if you go to the cable car barn now that still exists, that's an original cable car. That's an 1800s cable car barn. The smokestack's very small. It was shortened by the 1906 earthquake, but it used to be really tall, and that's how the draw for the coal fire would give them steam energy to power a single power source that ran the cables all around the city. The whole genesis and the great thing about the cable car system is that it's one power source that runs a small cable, and now everybody talks about green energy. It's probably the most green energy you could ever have, because it's a very small 500 horsepower engine that's pulling these 17,000 cars around the city filled with people. It's a really inexpensive, economic, and a really nice way to transport people, but it is very expensive to keep them maintained. So the 1906 earthquake got rid of the majority of our cable cars in the system, except for the few that survived. And again, they only survived because the hills were so big. The electric cars that replaced most of the cable cars were now starting to get replaced by gas buses. So gas buses were the next generation of cars to try and get rid of the cable cars. And the mayor of San Francisco at the time, let me step back for 1 second. The bribes that the cable car systems tried to get pushed through San Francisco came out after the earthquake, that there was these bribes. And the city got very upset about the fact that there was bribery going on in the city to replace the cable cars. And that started the city buying all of its own transport systems. So San Francisco was also the very first place to have a municipal transportation system. So we were the first city in San Francisco too also to have a public transportation system in the country. So the cable cars, we owe that to the cable cars as well. There's a lot of things that we owe to the cable cars that we don't realize. Commuting, public transportation are two of them. So when the gas cars started, gas-powered buses became strong enough to actually take on hills, the mayor at this point was a wartime mayor, 1940s World War II mayor, said, let's get rid of the cable cars and replace them with buses, because the cable cars are just too expensive, and the city owned all the cable cars at this point, the last few remaining lines that survived the 1906 earthquake. So the city was all on board. Everybody was like, okay, let's go ahead and get rid of the cable cars. There was a woman named Panal, who was the head of the San Francisco Flower Society. She said, hey, I don't think we should really get rid of these that fast, because at this point in time, the entire world has gotten rid of, there's a couple places in the world at that time that had cable cars, but the majority of the world has gotten rid of cable cars. But San Francisco, the first line was on Clay Street, the first place was born, and she said, you know what, we should probably keep these. These are beautiful, they're part of our city, they're part of our culture, they're something unique that nobody else is going to have shortly. And she rallied the city, and the city rallied around the cable car and said, yeah, let's keep these. And the city wanted to get rid of them, they didn't get rid of them. Panal saved them for us. So at that point, the lines were reduced somewhat, but we still have quite a few lines in San Francisco. And as history goes along, what happens in San Francisco is a company making a pasta dish starts using the cable car as an advertisement. It's Rice-A-Roni. Rice-A-Roni is advertised around the world, but mostly in America, people that remember what the cable car was, because these used to be in every city in the country, start going, oh my God, I remember these little cars. We used to ride them as kids. I want to go back and ride these cars. Well, at this point, the only place you can ride them is San Francisco. So by the late 60s, early 70s, those cars are inundated. There's just massive amounts of people riding these cars, and they're beloved, and that's one of the reasons they became the landmark they are, is literally because of Rice-A-Roni. Another mayor came along and tried to get rid of the cable cars again, because the expense in the city, there was several deaths and accidents at that point, and in fact the California line was the last independently owned line in San Francisco that got bought by the city, and that was because of an accident. A woman was killed, and Lloyd's of London was their insurance company, and they dropped them at that point and said no more cable car insurance, so that's when the city took over. They're still incredibly dangerous. I mean, we just had a fatality a couple months ago on the cable cars. They're still dangerous. They're antique, very brutal machines, but they're unique to the city. So the next mayor that came along and wanted to get rid of them because of the expenses, Panal came back out of the woodwork again. She was still alive, and she said, hey, I'll fight this again. But the city waged a really, really ugly campaign, kind of like their last presidential campaign, against the cable cars. And they made it really cloudy about what was going on. And they said there was expense, there's all these problems and everything, that's why we need to get rid of the cable cars. Well, Fidel Klusman pretty much turned around on Sierra and showed all of the things, most of the things we were talking about were lies. But she again came out and said, look, these are unique and they're part of San Francisco's culture at this point. We don't build libraries, we don't build schools because they're going to make us money. We build them because they're part of our community and they're part of what we are. So again, she rallied the city, and the few lines, the 3 lines that are left, those few lines are what she saved. But at that point, they became national monuments as well. They're one of the few moving national monuments in the country. So the city can't get rid of them anymore. They'd have to have the federal government come in and help get rid of the cable cars. So the 3 lines we have left now, and one on California Street, which was the 3rd line ever built, are what are left, and that's worldwide. It's the last place. So the very first place you could ever ride a cable car was San Francisco on Clay Street. The very last place you could still ride a cable car is in San Francisco. So Klusman was right, and Fidel Klusman, car number 1 that runs on Panal, his name is her car. If you go in, there's a plaque for her. Also, the turnaround at Fisherman's Wharf is Klusman's, it's Fidel Klusman's arches for her. It's her turnaround. So she's been honored because for years nobody, they were like, well, yeah, we got the cable cars, great, gee whiz, but she really was the heart and soul, what saved the cars for us. And we're incredibly lucky to still have them. I'm really breezing by a brief part of the history. It's much more immersive, and to know that what the cars have meant to us for cities. I mean, to actually build, again, the way we commute is built around how cable cars worked. And now we're starting to see the next generation of what's going to happen, which I'm sure is going to be automated cars on our freeways, and we can thank the cable cars for that too. But eventually, I mean, when we got to show the documentary in Seattle, and when we were in Seattle, we found out that people now fly from Portland to San Francisco to work in Silicon Valley, get back on a plane and fly back up to Portland. That's their commute.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
So that's how big commutes are getting. So I can only imagine when we get automated cars, when people can sit, well, they are on their cell phone all the time in the car anyways. So when they get to actually sit down and work on their cell phone and drive the car as far as they need to go, we're going to see, 3 4 hour commutes. I mean, sometimes now just to get to here from the East Bay can be 2 hours. So I can see it being 3 and 4, 5 hour commutes easily, especially if you sit there and work in your car and you have a computer. I think they're probably going to have food delivery to cars on the freeway, you know what I mean? Little things will come down to deliver food, just need bathrooms now, so there'll be some reason to pull off the freeway. So we owe a lot to the cable cars, and for me, I've done, this is my 13th documentary, or 13th film, and I've done multiple documentaries on San Francisco history. And every time I do another film on San Francisco history, I learn more about San Francisco and how badass San Francisco actually is. Historically, across the country, people can say this, that, and the other thing, but San Francisco has changed the world in so many ways, and cable cars is one of those ways. It's like, wow, that's really amazing. And the reason I even did the documentary on cable cars is I want to do a film on the waterways and lighthouses of the Bay Area, and I knew before the gold rush, there was only 1 or 2 ways in and a couple of ports. And after the gold rush, it blew up because, I mean, there was just a map published the other day about the ghost fleet. There's ships buried underneath San Francisco because as the ships would come in, nobody would leave, so just the docks were filled with ships. You see pictures of just all these ships, and they eventually just started sinking them and putting the dirt over them and expanding the city and getting rid of the lights over the ships. So now all those ships are out there. And in fact, sometimes now, a lot of the buildings that are built in San Francisco, they don't hit bedrock. They actually just use the suction and the friction of the sand to put the pilings in. And they can sit there and figure out exactly how deep they need to go for what side of the building. But if they accidentally hit one of those boats, it's game over. I mean, so now we're starting to see these buildings are starting tilting. So there's reasons for that. These are all expanded lands. Bay Street used to be right on the bay. So it's all this expansion. But I want to do a film about that. And I'm knowing that the research, knowing that the expansion was massive after the gold rush for boats, I said, oh, I know a little bit about history in San Francisco. The cable cars did the same thing. So let me go look at the film on cable cars and see how the filmmaker took that. And I looked, and there's like feel-good movies about the cable cars, and there's TV shows that kind of brushed it, but nobody ever really went in deep and showed the history of it. So that's why I ended up doing the documentary on the San Francisco cable cars, because it was really, nobody has done this. And again, when I did the film, I learned so much even like knowing that this is exactly how we learned how to commute and why cities are the size they are is because of the cable car. So every time we do one of these things, it's amazing to me. I learn more than I want to, but that's awesome, and I get to expand and show other people that stuff. So anyway, the film is at our table if you guys are interested in seeing it. And we also have other films. We did a film on Playland, on the Cliff House, on the Sutro Bass, which if you go to Land's End and there's the ruins down, the Cliff House ruins, that was an amazing, all by itself. That whole story and what was there is amazing. We did film on that and some other things. But I'm sorry my slides didn't work. Longer, but this gives you more time to go get our movie and buy some comic books. So thanks for coming out and